Sheen Shots.
Yeah, boy.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Sheen Shots channel. Today I want to talk about another top 5 outward weapons. These will be the 5 best great hammers or two-handed maces in the game. There are many to pick from, but honestly only a few that stand out. I recently completed an entire playthrough with only great hammers, and I tried to use as many of them as I could. These are the ones that I think will give you the most fun with such a powerful weapon. Before we start with this list, do remember that great hammers and outward specialize in slow, heavy attacks that deal massive amounts of impact. They're most often used to knock back the enemy and push them to the ground, keeping you from even being attacked. These 5 take that style of gameplay and really max it out. Here are the top 5 great hammers and outward definitive edition. The Pillar Great Hammer can be found near the Legacy chest in the Spire of Light. This weapon is very slow, which makes it harder to use. However, it makes the list for 2 reasons. Number 1, the hammer is likely a reference to either Smaug's hammer in Dark Souls 1 or Morn's hammer in Dark Souls 3. It shares some details with both and, well, it's a giant pillar. Reason number 2 is that this hammer has the highest impact of any weapon in Outward. With 75 impact, it beats out even the Sar Great Hammer that deals 71. Again, it's very slow, but its massive size lets you beat down any who cross your path. Considering you could use the shove attack with this weapon instead of the main attack, this grants it an absolute god-level amount of stagger potential. This bell on a stick also deals both physical and lightning damage, so it cuts through enemy health a bit faster and is great against decay-based enemies. The ideal way to play with this guy is to take the Cabal Hermit skill tree, so Wind Infuse makes up for its lack of speed. You also get even more impact with that combination, making this thing kinda ridiculous. I personally hated this weapon because the build I created didn't take Wind Infuse, and unfortunately it's too difficult to not get hit without that skill. That being said, it has the potential to be super strong, and the animations you could get while launching enemies into the air with a large bell, totally worth it. The Pillar Great Hammer might not be the best Great Mace in Outward, but it is one of the stronger ones that can't be forgotten. I've often seen the brutal Great Mace being used by newer players who find it early on and think it looks fantastic. Well, it looks good, but it's really bad in combat. It's slow, does only physical damage, and doesn't have the best impact. So how the heck did it make it onto this list? Well, turns out it can be enchanted with one of the strongest weapon enchants, Crumbling Anger. The enchantment not only buffs the thing's damage, but it grants it the power of the elements as well. It gains 50% extra physical damage while inflicting burning, poison, and extreme poison. So not only does this brutal mace's physical damage skyrocket, but it also burns and deals 2 separate types of poison damage at the same time. You can very quickly gain the advantage in battle with high-powered attacks or simply get a few whacks in and run around. The burning and poison combination is so strong that many enemies, including some in Caldera, die from this alone. It's a very handy enchant to have on hand for defeating monsters you suck at or just don't feel like seriously dealing with. Unfortunately, mechanical enemies such as golems can't be burned or poisoned, so it isn't the best for dealing with the Rust and Vengeance quest, as the Antique Plateau is crawling with robots. However, the utility of this is pretty nasty and could easily boost your power. The brutal Great Mace might suck initially, but enchanting it turns into something truly brutal. Another great outward weapon that deserves the number 3 spot on this list is the Marble Great Hammer. This guy is also pretty bad on its own, but luckily you can enchant it with Weightless, which grants it 0.2 more attack speed and reduces its weight by half. After doing this, we have a strong Great Hammer that deals high physical damage and swings rapidly at 1.1 attack speed. Most Great Hammers that have any good stats on them are pretty slow, which makes it easier to get hit and forces fights to almost double in length sometimes. This heavy-duty hammer swinging at such a fast speed will let you hit enemies faster and knock them down with ease. I can see how some people might place this lower on the list, but honestly, Weightless is a top-notch enchantment. It makes these marble weapons go from solid middle ground weapons to endgame gear. It can be bought from the weaponsmith in Harmattan when he happens to sell it, or just from looting ornate chests in the Endmerker Forest. I think it pairs really well with the Zagus chestplate in terms of looks and having higher physical damage. If you're ever looking for a solid weapon that deals good damage and feels very usable against every enemy, then the Marble Great Hammer is perfect for you. In fact, it's perfect for using the higher tier skills, since they destroy your durability quickly, and this behemoth has 450 durability. This is just a really well-rounded weapon that you can get into a scrap with and get out with relative ease. Ah yes, the good old Ghost Parallel. This here is a truly special weapon in Outward that does a few interesting things. It is one of the more challenging items to get, forcing you to deal with the Ark's docking positions in Caldera, and it also reduces your physical damage resistance by 15%, which I think is pretty obviously a bad stat to have. Nevertheless, it is more than good enough to make up for these facts, and it also sounds really funny in combat. This has the fastest swing speed of any Greathammer, sitting at 1.2 attack speed. It also deals ethereal and physical damage, which ethereal is almost always going to be strong against enemies. But here's the big kahuna for this hammer. It inflicts Aether Bomb. This does take a few hits, but then the enemy will have an aura of purple around them. 15 seconds later, they will explode in a huge ethereal blast that deals fantastic damage and loads of impact. Yeah, you have to wait 15 seconds, which sucks. And using this on low-level enemies has you killing them before the explosion even happens. But for boss fights, the reaction is amazing and cuts out a really nice chunk of health from big baddies. This weapon is probably more for skilled players as it does weaken you, but the Aether Bomb is really good in Outward, and you also have to remember that it looks super cool as well. Sometimes fun things just win me over, okay? Ghost Parallel is an ethereal monster and will also make you never want to hear a tuning fork ever again, but that's besides the point. Finally, we've come to the single best Great Mace in Outward. The #1 big bonk weapon for absolute Giga Chads. And that is the Manticore Great Mace. Made from the tail of 2 manticores and the prawns of 2 rock mantises, this deadly club is uncontested as the best Great Mace. Why, you might ask? Well, it deals 24.5 physical and decay damage, which demolishes enemy health. It also has an extremely high amount of impact, sitting at 60. Add in the fact that it swings with a 1.1 attack speed and inflicts extreme poison, and this thing is a monster. You can knock most enemies down in 2 hits with this, and since it swings so quickly, even manticores can't keep up from you staggering them. I've never felt more confident with melee combat in Outward than I did when I had the Manticore Great Mace. It's a bit more challenging to get, but absolutely worth it. Anything that doesn't die quickly will succumb to the effects of extreme poison later on, giving it damage over time and top-tier combat attacks. As always, we must look at the fashion, and since we took rope and strapped a manticore's tail to the end of a rod, I think it's safe to say this one is the most beastly-looking weapon you'll ever find. In fact, I'd say it's possible this is one of the top 5 weapons in Outward in total, not just Greathammers. With the massive amount of impact it has paired with elemental damage and rapid swings, it's impossible to go wrong with this weapon. I highly recommend you try out the Manticore Great Mace, as it's a weapon fit for a monster hunter. And there you have it, the top 5 Greathammers in Outward Definitive Edition. There are 1 or 2 other good ones out there, but these all feel really fun to use and could be devastating in the correct hands. Greathammers make the game almost trivial with how easy they deal impact to enemies. I mean, even enemies in Caldera just fall over in a few hits and give you massive windows to attack without any consequences. Pair these with some decently tanky armor and nothing will stop you as you rampage your way across RI, bashing everything in the head and launching them across the screen with Juggernaut. Do consider commenting down below what your favorite Greathammer is. Outward has many options to choose from in terms of weapons, and there's no way for us all to have the same list, so I'm very interested in what you think. Is the Manticore Great Mace the strongest hammer in Outward? I sure think so. Thanks for watching as always, and I'll catch you next time.